Welcome everyone to the Amplify Your Brand series, the ultimate live in building a powerful brand in today's digital age. Along with my friend and fellow branding expert Simão out there, we're here to share expertise and help you take your brand to the next level. So whether you're an entrepreneur, a small business owner, a marketing professional, someone's tinkering around with their personal brand specifically for today, this is a live stream packed with practical insights and strategies that will help you amplify your brand and stand out in that digital landscape that we all know. So let's get ready, take some notes, put down what we say into action today, because by the end of this live stream, you'll have a clear roadmap of building a brand that truly resonates with your target audience. So thank you for joining us today, and let's find another way to amplify your brand. And Sim, I've learned recently that personal health is a really, really big thing when it comes to personal brand. So without yourself being healthy, you may not have a brand, but that's another thing to take awareness of, is not just with health, but in general, make sure your personal branding is healthy so that when you aren't around, and I guess that's what the goal of today is all talking about, is what are people thinking about you when you're not in the room, because that's really what your personal brand is when it comes to this kind of thing. But I'll let you have a bit of a review of what today's really about and what we're going to cover.
That's exactly the introduction for today's topic. We're going to talk about the personal brand ahead of the business brand. In today's world, with all the amount of technology available to us and the amount of fakeness that abounds everywhere online, it is more than ever important to establish a coherent, authoritative, trustworthy personal brand. And I thought that topic was more and more relevant as we keep progressing in this said age of digital existence. And we're going to talk and cover some topics that go into creating that authenticity and that personal brand, so that the business brand can actually benefit from it, because we all look at the people who stand in front of the brand. We all look them up online, and we either find information that favors our biases, or we don't find that information, or even information that counters our biases towards those people. So let's get right into it, Chris.
Yeah, and just touching on that, we're talking about personal branding, and it is a spectrum here. It's not just famous people with big brands and things like that. It's you yourself, everyday life as well. Like it's careers get damaged by this sort of stuff. It's your family life can get ruined by this. Like there are so many aspects of personal branding, and we are obviously going to talk about a commercial aspect of this in most of what we talk about today. But a lot of what we talk about, you can take into your personal life and apply it, and it'll resonate with you and those around you when you find that, the aunties and uncles are actually telling people about you in a certain way, and you've got family members, actually out there, being your advocates for you. So please take on board the fact that today is not just about the commercial sense. It's ultimately what we want you to do, but there is other aspects of this that, you can take on a personal level. So looking forward to getting into it. So let's get into the aspect of it. And so I just want to highlight that everything we talk about today is going to be part of the P8 branding program that we've spent 20 years developing and upgrading to basically develop the branding identity framework, the BIP, and it encompasses the 8 critical sections of the brand, which you call the 8 Ps. And as an easy to understand and implement program, so every business owner can amplify their brand. So there are 8 sections to this, and today we're going right into the persona aspect of it, which you can see Sim there doing his happiest moment to illustrate that for us by pointing to number 5 on that list. So please, let's get into the what. Talk to me.
Yes.
What it's all about.
So let's start with breaking down what a brand is. And it's at its simplest core, a brand is a promise of an experience, and then the ability to replicate that experience. That happens with the businesses, and that happens with personal brands. Now, Chris said we're not just going to cover the commercial. So let's start with the personal, because that, I think, we can bridge from that into the business in a much more relatable way. And not everybody actually thinks they have a personal brand, which is the first fallacy of personal branding, which is that everybody actually does have a personal brand. Not everybody has the control of that personal brand and how that brand comes across to the people around us. Your personal brand is your reputation, very simply stated. Your family, your friends, your peers, your work colleagues, somebody that knows you, they think something of you that is either based on a very small sample of the experience they had with you or an ongoing one. Your neighbors think something of you from what they see. Your deli shop guy, they know a little bit of you and they think something of you. So these instances of contact with your audience, they create a perception. Your friends, your family, everybody's had an impression of you. How well you align that with what you say you're about is what we're going to uncover this, and specifically for the business aspect of what we're covering today. So with that, let's jump into very famous, well-known brands that we have come to know. We have very famous people there. Everybody knows the Richard Bransons of the world. Everybody knows the Michael Jordans, the Bruce Lees, the Seth Godins, even the villains. Even the villains, we know them for something. And all these brands, they started somewhere. This point of their beginning is where we want to encourage everybody listening in today's session to think of themselves. Each and every one of these famous faces that you have there on screen, they began developing an activity that had relevance to the audience that knew them. Michael Jordan was a magnificent athlete. He made a name in that arena and transposed it into other arenas. Tony Robbins. Those who know Tony's story, he began by offering free coaching on radio on people on losing their most feared phobias. Richard Branson, he actually put up a fanzine of and a number of flyers in the London music scene back in the day. Every single one of these brands started somewhere, and that somewhere had a relevance to the audience that they served. And now, look at them today. So let's recap. What is actually a brand? I asked this in my profile a few weeks ago, and I had all sorts of different adjectives to convey a commonality. So I asked, what is a brand to you? And the people in my network came back with words such as feeling, perception, identity, reputation, even aura. Basically, a way of conveying the reality and assigning meaning that comes with that experience of that brand and translating it in its different expressions. That could be image, that could be the impression, that could be persona. And some people even called a brand an iconic feeling, an iconic recognition that represented something or somebody. As it pertains to personal brands, there's a set of unique characteristics, I call them isms, that are intrinsic. To some of us, where we come from actually carries some weight in our message, our cultural background, our ideology affiliation complements the values and the content and the message that we put out on a regular basis, which is complemented then by our personality, our expressions, and some of us actually then go into the uncovering of our story, our vulnerabilities. We create a personal style. We identify who's on the other side of the things that we stand for and believe in. And we wave that flag that stands for our personal brand. Chris, anything to add? I think you're muted.
I was just saying, I love what you're talking about because, and I was just sitting back silently watching and listening to it because, these things you're bringing up, every single person that's listening to this day has one of these aspects that's stronger than others, but they've got all of them in some way. Like, it's not like it's unique to only one person. Everyone's got a story. Just some stories are a little bit more, louder than others, or other aspects of your life are a little bit more, things we should focus on than others. But everyone has these things. And if you identify them with yourself and work out which ones can be stronger for you and which ones can attract the audience you want. You know, it's going to help your personal brand get where you need to take it. And these things are very similar to brands that we love as much as we do, in the way that they make us feel a certain way. You must know people in your life that make you feel a certain way. And if you're going through something in life, you reach out to those people, or if you're looking for a good time, you go with those people. If you're looking for a serious time and you need to talk through something, you know who to go to. Like, these are the things that you do on that level. When it comes to personal branding, in this case, as we've talked about, when it comes to your choosing your career, if you want to get a better job and get up in life, you've got to develop that personal brand. And some of these aspects we've got on the screen there can help you get where you've got to go. You've just got to identify these things, make sure those things are highlighted on your LinkedIn profile, and make sure you're showing up where you need to show up to see these things happen. And I may be jumping ahead on some of the doors we're going to talk about later, but I just wanted to get into that. Again, we love to talk about personal brands as big brands, as we've just touched on. Like, everyone would love to be a Richard Branson and have all that money and acknowledgement and, you know, the things that come with what his lifestyle brings these days. But we can be as simple as just making sure that people like you and know about you as the basis for how this all works. And when they do talk about you and you're not in the room, they're saying what you want them to say. You try to control it as much as you can. You can't control it. Like, I can say things about Sim and, you know, blow a big horn and say how amazing he is, but I'm sure not everybody is going to say the same thing. But he does his best to help me and others say those things about him, so that when you talk to somebody, they get a good idea before they meet Sim, or if they do meet Sim, what to expect, because they've got that perception already put forward for us. So,
correct.
Anyway,
That promise,
so yeah,
that promise, that perception was created at some point by eventually what you said and other people said.
Yep.
And this balance between what you actually said with what they said about you at the middle is where the brand meets.
That's
so
right.
We've just recapped very simply the start of a brand, what it is, and how you can own on it. A simple exercise that I usually recommend to anybody who states they're lost with their brand and they don't know what to start with is simply to ask people around yourselves, what do they know you for? Because everybody has a perception of you. You're the XYZ guy. Oh, you're the muscles guy. You're the brand guy. You're the bicycles guy. Whatever you're the guy or gal for, people know you for it. Even if you have 2 or 3 main topics, they'll know you for those. And if those topics bear relevance to an audience, there will be more people that you can say those things to and attract towards your brand.
Yeah, just to go back to that though, but what you say, if it's so different to what they say, then you need to find a way to get the balance on that. Okay.
Well,
because,
yes.
I mean, we famously know Steve Jobs had that distortion filter, and it worked very effectively for him with what he was doing. But we also know if you go too far with disillusion and you think you're something and you're out there saying, you know, I'm this and I'm that, and then others are saying the opposite, it actually is going to do damage. So you've got to make sure that you're living and breathing what you're saying, and it's meeting in the middle there, because otherwise it can destroy a personal brand. So
correct.
Now,
yes.
We won't go into all the things today, but there are techniques you can use to get that balance. So if there is that disperse, like, you know, you're saying one thing and everyone else is saying the other, and you are disillusioned to it, we can, if you work with, say, us, for example, we can find ways to get that balance back. But you've got to know it. Like, it's not something you can just go off and do it. You've actually got to accept what you're good at. We've talked about this many times about authenticity.
Yeah.
I think you've got, I don't want to jump ahead of it here, do you have authenticity there? So we'll go into that deeper later on. So we'll get onto that. So anyway, let's move on. Get into why.
Yes. And why would anybody think about creating and developing, cultivating their personal brand? Well, like we mentioned right at the start, and especially if you're in business. Your business gains a dimension by being represented by the person, the individual in front of it. And that would be you, or that would be a spokesperson, but there is a public facing someone that will cover a lot more trust ground than your business can do by itself. So it can sound like someone moves in a particular way, and it helps form a perception with facets to it. These imperfections and these things that this person may do well, like mannerisms and expressions, they end up creating a personality. And this personality, many times over, becomes associated with that brand. So depth is one of the reasons why you really want to think about how you put your personal brand out in front of the world with the business brand behind it. You go as a person first. You don't show up in a meeting with your business in front of everybody's face. No. And go tell people to buy your stuff. You come in as a person. You dress in a certain way. You walk in a certain way. You go and approach people, or you're timid and that's your thing. That's also fine. But whatever that brand is going to be is how the brand behind it, the business brand, will begin to be associated with.
Hence why many times these days CEOs of businesses are more public in their way that they're seen out there.
Their activities, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's why when Jeff Bezos was running, Amazon, he was a spokesperson, but he's been very, very good at kind of distancing himself over the years. But he's still always forever known as the foundation of that. Elon Musk, we know these days, is just phenomenal at it. And for better and for worse, we've had many conversations. He's done very well, and there's other things he does not so well. But the thing is, with that, he's still consistent with his inconsistency.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
If he has an opinion, he has an opinion, and he's strong about it. He usually comes out with almost factual information, but ways to justify why he's the way he is. So he doesn't just shoot his mouth off. He generally has a reason why he's saying what he's saying. And sometimes we don't know straight away why. He usually comes out later on. But
absolutely. But the one thing people have come to expect from him is straightforwardness and a complete lack of polish for the media preoccupation of it. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He doesn't try to dress it nicely for an interview. He actually says things that at times might put the awkward feeling in the room when he gets interviewed about topics that he's quite knowledgeable about. And like Chris said, sometimes he knows more than the present of that moment indicate. That's for most of us anyway.
And Richard Branson's another good example of this in past years, where he found that if he was being adventurous and doing things, then it actually helped his brand. So he just went out and did stuff, because whenever he did stuff, sales went up. So he was just like, well, I'm the brand, but the brand isn't necessarily me. It's just what I do raises awareness. It gets people's interest, and they like what I'm doing, so they then like the brand. So again, not everyone in this conversation that's listening today is as lucky as some of these people we're talking about, but you still have your way of doing your thing in a human way that we're talking about here that then enhances the business brand. So
correct.
Again, look into how you can do that. Let's get on to the next thing. So
you just talked about it. All these things, all these actions, all these demonstrations of a set of values, a certain way of being, a way of coming across, they, for the better and for the worse, they build that authenticity. Because like we just mentioned, Elon Musk doesn't sugarcoat it, but he is authentic. You can expect him to say whatever he needs to say in a not too brutal way. He just states it as it is. And if some people don't like it, that's fine. Some people will align with the way he says it in. And this is the true authenticity builder that we're talking about in how it pertains to personal branding.
I'll give you one that isn't doing so well at this personal branding. And it's a guy that runs Facebook, right?
Yes.
Like Zuckerberg is probably one personal brand that you just cannot trust. Like he says one thing and then another thing happens, and then he says, this is not what I'm going to do. And then he goes ahead and does it. Right. So you just there. That's where we're talking about authenticity is not his strong point.
Correct. And that is for a myriad of reasons. Some of them we understand that stakeholders expect him to say and behave a certain way, but that goes against who he is. He is a geek at nature. He's a socially awkward person at his heart. And the way he tries to do authenticness is the most plastic feeling that you could expect from somebody facing the public, unfortunately, because he's done tremendous things.
But anyway, let's talk about.
Well, it segs right into the next one. Keep going, Chris.
Just rolls on in.
Well, nowadays, the draping has truly fallen on the entire meta universe, and like Chris mentioned, it's not absolutely sure that when the public is promised something, that Meta is actually going to do it. And specifically with the way they've been going about managing information is a nice way to put it. And the users that flocked towards the platform for which Zuckerberg was known for are not necessarily trust building. But again, we're talking about this example has an analogy of what trust looks like and what it doesn't, authenticity looks like. And with trust, being seen breeds familiarity. And Zuck sometimes hides away where some other entrepreneurs don't shy away from being seen out in the public. And they either solidify the company's brand presence and they acquire confidence from the public, or they do the opposite of it.
Well, trust these days also, there's two things I want to touch on. One is social media and online presence these days. It's harder for people to get away with things than they used to, right? So previously it was just your sort of traditional mediums of newspaper and magazines and radio and TV, right? So you could get away with things because those were controllable mediums where the big corporate could say good and bad about you, but if you got on the right side of them, PR could do amazing work and do the right thing for you, and you could be doing a horrible thing but be out there in the persona of being a great thing, right? You can control it. But now with social media and online, that has changed dramatically in the sense that others get to voice and control you beyond you. So the corporation isn't as, four little mediums that we all see. It's like, and we're talking about lots of different mediums in social. We're not just talking just Facebook or just Instagram. We're talking about lots of different places you can be seen. So you could have a terrible Facebook personal life, but your corporate life on LinkedIn could be looking amazing. So if you control how the message is being put out there, you can be looked at in a certain way. But you don't want the Facebook side to be this party image, and then on LinkedIn you're trying to be super serious and corporate, because eventually someone will jump across to Facebook and see what's going on and maybe see that it's not really what you're putting out there. So you got to be careful when it comes to these things.
With all of this that we're talking about, I want to put a little pause for 2 seconds and mention that this is actually a great opportunity, especially for the smaller business owners that are listening in today's session. You don't need to look polished. You don't need to look like a TV product. You don't need to look glossy from all angles. That's the main point here. The personal brand that people are gravitating towards breathe authenticity, even if that authenticity looks like an undone piece of clothing, even if the authenticity comes with a zip on the side of the face on some days. All of these things are actually not a hindrance, but an actual opportunity for the majority of people that have tried to embrace what a personal brand in today's world looks like. Because Chris said it, up until a few years ago, we had gatekeepers, we had production lines of established brands, and the version that the corporate world put out is now fleshed out in the real world of everyday usage. We compare LinkedIn, we compare Facebook, we compare articles written by, we go and find information on whoever it is. And this can also be a great opportunity. So I'll take the button off the pause now again and go back into.
But in saying that, though, it can be also the other part of the conversation I wanted to just highlight in trust these days is that there is lots of mistrust being put out there. So there's lots of messages that aren't real that you've got to deal with. And then we've now got this AI revolution that's coming through, where, again, that can take things to a whole different level because you are not seeing what you think you're seeing because of the fact that people's faces, voices, stuff can be written for them, about them. There's all sorts of stuff. So, this is becoming hard to trust. But what I think we'll get onto later on in the conversation is about doing it consistently. And if you're showing up in a certain way consistently, then even if there is mistrust out there, people are going to even question it because they're going, well, I read that and I saw that, but he's acting this way or doing that. So that mustn't be true. So there are ways to overcome that and work through trust, but it is a huge part of your personal brand.
On either side that we talk about when it comes to personal brand, you'll find open doors that were probably not there to begin with, but now because you made your public statement, you've waved your flag, you've presented yourself in a certain light, you'll at least get the attention and the first 2 seconds of conversation with people that probably would have not come across your spheres initially. So this is what a personal brand and a well-built one can do for you. Create new opportunities presented to a person that otherwise would not show up. And networking is a fantastic example of this. You go and spread seeds in networking events, and then people follow up, people find out about you, and all of these seeds then start germinating and create a cumulative effect that complements the personality that you put forth in that room. Again, this is either going to generate or repel certain connections, but it will definitely open doors. You just have to pick the doors that you want to go through.
That's right. And I mean, not everyone wants to be a personal brand speaking person. I know you've got aspirations yourself, Simão, on this front, but if you do understand your personal brand, you do understand what you're good at and your niches and what people might find interesting, if you put those things out there, obviously what people are going to do is go talk to that person because they're really good at that. Or I've heard them talk about this. I think they'd be really great for that, whatever that is. So, there's no harm in Australians. We're not such a big fan of the bragger, the boaster. The Americans love it, but we aren't so great at it. But you've got to find a nice balance there where you're showing off you're good at and knowledgeable about what you're talking about without being, I guess, arrogant. Unless, of course, again, like Gary V, arrogance can be actually a positive of your personal trait and become your brand if that's the case. And I call him arrogant, but at the same time, Gary V seems to always back up whatever he says. So he's not so arrogant. He's just very, very good at what he knows.
The Americans have a good expression for arrogance. It's not arrogance if you can back it up with numbers. And most of the people who say it can usually back it up with numbers. And I put this back in the realm of sports. Certain players are seen as arrogant, but when they score a number of points or they bring a number of rebounds every single game, night in, night out, they basically create the case for not being arrogant and just being who they are. And that perception is then the main narrative around their perceived arrogance.
So,
speaking of sports.
So attracting talent. So if you're a personal brand, getting this one right means that your job gets easier and easier because you challenge bringing more talented people to you to deliver on what you're doing. But I'll let you get into this a little bit further and talk through it. So,
well, the first sentence pretty much sums it up. Game knows game. People who align with what you have to say, people who envision themselves as a part of the culture that you're breeding, they see themselves playing at your level, by your side. They want to contribute in some way, shape, or form, or they want to be part of that movement. And I felt that in a number of situations throughout my career. Early on as an employee, I felt a certain pull towards companies that were that were growing and wanted to create disruption in the marketplace. And at some point, I found that company, and I fully dressed their uniform and wore it very proudly. So this is the case for teams, for organizations, for movements. This is actually the connecting part of this entire personal brand. This is where people will start driving themselves and aligning themselves towards the cause, the movement, the culture that we've been slowly building up to this moment.
Yeah. So if you, again, coming back to what I was talking about earlier, if you know your niche and your vision, your talent, so like what you really want to get out of this world, you will attract more people like you, which means you'll either be able to open, like we talked about earlier, open more doors, or you'll be able to attract them to do work for you, with you, open doors for you. So it's really good to know what you're good at and who you want to work with, because they will find you if you start showing up. And as I said to you, on a personal level or on a corporate level, this is what's going to happen just naturally. It's just the law of attraction. So
yeah, correct. Well, with that, Chris just said something that is going to introduce us very, very well to the next topic. We jump into the how of the personal brand building.
Connect the dots.
So what's building a personal brand about? What is the anatomy? So Chris just mentioned that when you are in a certain way and you attract certain people, you will find that specific places and environments are much more prone for a specific personal brand to find resonance in the ecosystem that it wants to gravitate towards. In the case of, for example, clients that we begin working with, we like to have an idea if they are comparable to somebody else in the industry. Are they like XYZ? Are they like a mini version of Gary Vee? Are they an improvement on Brent Cardone? Whoever the case may be, are you like them, or are you truly so unique that you're going to have some pioneering work to do? And with that, then the second question becomes, what platforms actually work for you? Because you may be a great speaker, but maybe don't present so well visually, or don't write well because you can't have the concentration. Writing well and speaking well are very different art forms. And I completely recognize this myself. So if you have a personal style or a visual identity or an ideal platform, have you noticed what that is? And is that something that you've seen before, or are we asking you questions for which you didn't even have to think about the answers for?
Yeah, and a good example of that is you've got a great face for radio. So if you're not really like a person that is going to be well in front of big crowds, but you can create a podcast and then you can edit the way you talk so that it comes out the right way and you can control the message rather than live streaming like we are today. Like you got to choose your mediums. You and I both feel confident enough that we know what we're talking about to get most of it right today. We'll always make mistakes.
Correct.
But the general thing is we know branding, so we're happy to talk live about it. Where if you know nothing about branding, why would you do a live stream about branding? Because you could fall over. So you've got to think about these things before you get into why you do what you do. But get on to the next thing. So is there
yes.
Yeah. And are you unique? Yeah, get into that.
So remember just a while ago when we asked you to play this exercise and ask people around you, how do they define you? How do they know you? What do they know you for? Usually these are an indication of the three adjectives that define you, because these three adjectives have something to do with the way your brand will be put out to the world. Which one is your flag? We've talked about this earlier as well. With the flag that you wave for a specific cause, do you actually know who the enemy is? If you stand for charity, obviously you won't be able to stand for trades of humans.
Most people won't, but I get it.
Exactly. Or most people won't say it out loud in front of a camera, but then do the actions and the body of work back that up. So Who are you and why now? Are you unique in any of these ways? What is it that you want others to see about you? So all of these questions, they help refine the anatomy of your personal brand. And you better have some really solid answers at this point before you start creating content indiscriminately, because at some point, you or somebody else may find discrepancies and incoherences. And it's very, very important that you do the groundwork so that you strategically create that content.
Yeah, I was going to say, and when we talked about this earlier, you don't just make these up, because we talked about being authentic earlier. Like, there's no use saying, what is your flag? And then you say that trying to think of an example, but if it's like you're against, sorry?
An example would be very easily, and using the child trades as an example, if you've got photos taken with Jeffrey Epstein, obviously your flag that you're waving for protecting children and charity is not gonna wave for very long, because that
and like there's things like religion, there's like you talked about money earlier, there are things around whether you're sustainable, like Apple are a great example of this with what they do. They do their best to say, here's this amazing technology, but also it's very green. Now, whether we believe it or not, and it seems hard to believe, but they do their best to do that. With you, you've got to do the same thing. If you're going to be a sustainable business that's always going to use ethical or green environment type stuff, then you need to make sure you are emphasizing that in everything you do. There are some personal brands in this world that do this very, very well. They're not just that they do something, but they also make sure that everyone knows that they're doing it in a sustainable way. Okay, so you've got to be mindful of how you go about this. Again, you can't always be perfect. There will always be, especially when you're smaller, it's easier to get away with things. As you get bigger, and a lot of brands that say they're sustainable do get a little bit unstuck with this one, because there's always someone that's investigating a little bit deeper and finds things for you. But you've got to do your best on that. So yeah. So anyway, let's go into
the next question. Who do you help? Who is your audience? Because personal brands are not about ourselves. They're actually about the audience that we serve.
Yes.
What do they do? Where do they hang out? What do they like? Are you actually able to see what the world looks like from their filter? Because you understand their problems and their concerns, you're that much closer to being able to speak to them and attract more of them. Can you speak about what is relevant to them? These are huge questions.
Yeah, I have some clients I'm working with at the moment on a personal coaching level, and they struggle with this one. They keep putting the I in the filter and forgetting to put in they in the filter. Like it's you've got to understand that it's not about you, it's about them and what their interests are. And if you get that right, advertising works. And so I've been working with a number of clients where we've changed their language to, I know you like this, Mr. Client, but if you use this language, the people will receive it a certain way, and I guarantee you'll get leads and opportunity. And this particular client I've been working with, they did literally within a week, went from having zero things coming from Facebook ads and that to having 7 that week, and then now that's grown to 17 to 20 now. So you've got to understand who your audience is and what they are interested in to attract them. Like meets like. Okay.
That is a very, very good example. So let's dig in a little bit deeper on your client, Chris, because I know I've been obviously privy to some of the work that you've been doing, and I want to ask you what the 3 biggest corrections or mistakes that this client, who is very knowledgeable, by the way, was making with their brand and the way they marketed their message. So the first one you just mentioned right there.
Yeah, it was about I. So once we changed to more about pain points. So we went into a client's scenario and saying, look, you've got all the credibility, but now you need to show why that credibility matters. And so, and then we talked about the clients he wanted to attract, what their problems were. So he could do things for them, but that wasn't enough, because that's not the biggest pain point, because they think they can do certain things that he does, right? But
Yeah.
When it came to actually saying if he did it for them, they get their time back, they make more money, and they sound better, or they put themselves in front of other audiences in a certain way that makes them look better, all of a sudden the ego of that client that he was looking for were getting stroked. They were going, well, I'm getting my time back. That means I can do more of this and that and that. And all of a sudden, everything changed for them. And when he's on the phone now with clients, before they meet him and talk to him, they actually have already said, you sound like you really know what you're talking about. I really like what you're saying. How can you help me? Right. So the conversation's already got momentum because the perception has already been raised. The bar has already been set. So he doesn't have to go 10 steps downwards to try to explain himself. He's already there, and they now want to know, how can we go to the next level?
Very good distinction. Yes. Put yourself at a level that clients can actually, or customers can actually get up on with you, instead of looking like you're this unattainable, far too much ahead, know-it-all kind of provider, because that doesn't actually go.
I was going to say, it actually leads into the next step, the next slide, if you want to go into that one, because it actually leads right into it. Claim.
Yes. Yeah. I'll go.
No, you talk about the crafting mission.
Okay. So craft a mission statement that speaks to your audience in their language. In their language. This is very useful to know. And again, I put my hand up because it took me a long time to transition into what I know to how does what I know help anybody else. And this is actually one of the reasons why I put myself through the paces of going to learn public speaking, because I work with public speakers. I work with people that leverage the power of one-to-many, but I was missing parts of what the world looks like from their perspective, from the stage. Am I speaking their language? Why would they choose me to work with them if I'm missing the language that connects with them? So craft a mission statement that is able to call out their problems, make it apparent that you know the way to the solution, and you'll be standing out from the many others that probably even have the knowledge, but they're not connecting. So once you state your claim in that way, you'll be that much better as a personal brand.
Yeah. And your mission statement, again, has to be authentic. We talked about this earlier. Like, do not just make it up because it sounds good. Like, you have to back up what you're saying. You get found out very, very easily with that side of things. If you go out and say you want to change the world and blah, 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 if you can't like show steps to achieving that in the first time when people start.
Correct. You want to change the world, and you can't even make the time to hear your employees tell you about their problems in the workplace. Then there's a discrepancy there. And with this, we come to the closing of today's session. Let's have a little bit of a coffee sip, shall we?
Yes.
So the coffee cup moment for today. Cultivating a strong personal brand as a business owner is essential in today's world. Aligning perception with intention fosters authenticity and trust, which is crucial for genuine connections with your customers and your clients, aka your audience. Shaping your personal narrative puts you in a control spot of your business's identity and make sure that you directly influence the outcomes. As a human, you're inherently much more relatable and trustworthy, bypassing the mere budgets and campaigns and figures-based approaches to creating a message to the public. Other humans will appreciate that you do the effort of understanding this distinction.
Yeah, no, well said. So that is the topic for this week. And I guess what we'd love you to think about is, if anything today resonated with you and you'd like to book a discovery session with us. So we'd love to hear from you so you can understand your business and assess the state of your brand, your goals, and where your brand needs to be. So please visit brandy.agency, brand guardianship, or just reach out to us in any way you can on the mediums that we are on to talk to us, because we would love to have a chat with you and talk about how we can help you with that. how does that work? Well, look, we've broken it into a simple 1, 2, 3. We book a discovery call with you and we have a chat and try to do the best to understand what your goals are and where you want to be. And then we select a program that we think is going to suit you to determine where we should take you and your next level. And then from there, we take you into an onboarding and coaching sessions where we will work with you on staying focused on amplifying your brand as we work through those techniques that we've developed in the discovery session. So please reach out to us and let's have a discovery session if you are looking at developing your personal brand, even if you have an existing one and you want to take it to the next level, or you're just starting out. Whichever way it is, we would love to hear from you and talk about that. Even if it's not to work with us, just to have a general chat about personal branding, we would love to hear from you. We just never know where the conversation may go. We may be able to help you. You may be able to help us. Look forward to having a chat with you. And I think that brings us to the end of, you've got a little highlight for next week. I forgot about this slide. Talk about
it. Exactly. So all of this session today was dedicated to knowing yourself that much better. Knowing thyself is true power. Next week, we are actually going to cover about knowing your enemy and why it's important for you as a brand to have one. I'm going to use a little Sun Tzu passage from The Art of War that I thought was very pertinent. If you know your enemy and yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Somebody cue in the epic music, please.
Fantastic. Now looking forward to that one. So yeah, look out for that next week as we return for another session of Amplify Your Brand and talking through knowing thy enemy, or your enemy in this case. But yeah, good session. Thanks for your time, Sim, and look forward to next week. Thanks everyone for joining us. And if you got any sign-offs, would you like people to do things? Would you like them to give us feedback?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I would like to ask people. We always like to close with asking people where they saw this from and place a comment from your origin. Thank you very much and see you next week.
All right, guys. Look forward to hearing about you and helping you amplify your brand. Take care.